think you want- Okay. Okay. I guess I can click on that because it's covering the screen. Can I do that? Okay, good. I believe you want me to talk about the automatic writing that I do.
Yeah, anything you like, but our original focus in this group was on automatic writing, but we spread out from there. So
Okay. Oh, good. Okay.
and everybody mute, please, for background sound.
Okay, then I need to give you a little bit of history. I had a son that was quite ill and passed away. He had Crohn's disease, very severe, and he passed away at 26. Before he started that, I knew nothing about any of this. Believe me when I tell you, I had never had anything to do with anything supernatural or in any way, shape, or form. But when he became ill, he and I took a Reiki course together. I don't know if any of you have practiced Reiki, but we took a course together, hands-on healing, et cetera, et cetera. And so when he would have pain in any area of his body, I would touch it with my hand, and my hand would always shake and his pain would go away. And so that was just part of what we did. He'd say, Mom, you know, my heart is racing again, or I have this pain here. And I would put my hand on, my hand would shake and his pain would go away and we would move on. In any case, he passed away. He had very, very severe. And after that, I had a picture of him in my kitchen. And every night before I went to bed, I would just touch the picture. I was a grieving mom. He was 26 when he passed, but he had been with me because he had been sick for many years. And I would touch the picture and say goodnight. And about 2 weeks after he passed away, I touched the picture and I said goodnight. And my hand started shaking. And I touched the picture again, and my hand started shaking again. I wasn't shaking it. And so I said, Todd, is that you? And my hand started shaking like crazy. So I said, well, okay, if that's you, then I need to find a way to talk to you and ask questions or whatever. So I'm going to ask you questions. And if you shake my hand, that's a yes. And if you don't shake it, that's a no. So I started asking him, typical, I was a grieving mother, you know, are you in heaven? Are you okay? Are you whatever? Ask someone you think is crossed over. And he was giving me yes answers. And when it was a no, it wasn't just that my hand didn't shake. My hand went still, and I can't explain the feeling, but it was like I couldn't move it. And so we did this yes, no thing back and forth. And I did it for a couple of nights in a row. And then I said, well, I think I better tell my husband that I'm talking to our son. He'll either think I'm crazy or he'll listen. So anyway, I sat him down at the couch and I said to him, I've been talking to Todd. And he said to me, well, can I talk to him too? And I said, well, I think you can through me, and my hand will give you the answer. He'll either shake my hand or not. So my husband, being who he is, said to Todd, through me, he said to him, Todd, we have a problem with the sprinkler system in the yard. Now, this is typical what he would say to solve a problem. So what do I know about sprinkler systems? Nothing. We had a few acres of land, there's sprinkler systems all over, and I knew nothing about the sprinkler system. So he said, it's, you know, something's wrong with it. I need to know where it's broken. So there are sprinkler heads in all these different places. He said, so he started saying to Todd, is it the sprinkler head that's over here? Is it the system? Is that over there? Is, you know, he just kept asking questions. I kept getting no answers until he named one place where there was a sprinkler head, and what we didn't know was there some kind of hookup place. I don't know anything about it. But anyway, and Todd basically through my hand said that's where the problem was. So, okay, that was that. And I thought, well, that went well. The next day, my husband got up and he dug up the exact spot that Todd told him. And that's exactly where the problem was. And he fixed it. And we did not have a problem with the sprinkler system again. So I knew that Todd was giving me information and that he actually was talking to me. So he had two younger sisters. A few days later, I was in the car with the two girls, and I literally pulled over on the side of the road because I figured they can't go anywhere if I'm at the side of the road, if I start talking about this. And so I said to them, I've been talking to your brother and, someone, and the one in the back seat, the older one said, well, can I talk to him too? I said, you can. I think you can, but you don't have to say your question out loud. I don't know why I knew this. I just did. He said, I said, you can think it and my hand will give us the answer. And so she thought her question. Now, I didn't know what her question was or when she was finished thinking it because she didn't say anything. But as soon as she finished thinking it, my hand reacted with a yes or no. I don't remember the question. And she asked a few questions. Again, I had no idea what she was asking, when they ended or anything else, but my hand would react yes or no, and I would tell her the answers. So my other daughter did the same thing, exactly the same thing happened. So we knew that Todd was there and we knew that he was answering questions. So after a few weeks of my hand shaking for answers, I said, Todd, we have to find a better way. So I'd like you to write for me so that we can actually have, you can write down messages. So I had never done any kind of writing like that before, although I'm a handwriting analyst, but I had never done automatic writing. So I sat down with a pencil and paper and I wrote out the alphabet. And the only way that I could think to do it was to point the pencil at a letter and say, is it this letter? Is it this letter? Is it this letter? Is this letter? And my hand shook when it came to the letter. And so Todd literally spelled out a message to me. And so I asked him a number of questions, and that's how we did it with one letter at a time. And after I did that for a little while, I started to hear, I can't say hear, but I started to feel the word he was trying to tell me. And I started writing the word, one word at a time. And my hand would shake the entire time that I was doing the right words until I could write sentences. And then it got from hearing kind of words. I can't say I heard it in my ears. I heard it in my brain. You understand that. And then it was sentences, and I could just start automatically writing. Now, as a Reiki practitioner, I started using, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, it's called a miasm removal, where clients literally lie on the table for about 3 hours and they're in a almost sleep state, an altered state. And what's happening is spirit is removing all kinds of miasms and esoteric viruses and bacteria and different things from their body. And while that's happening to my clients, I do automatic writing for them from their guides. So the guides will tell me their name, the guide's name, and I will write 4 or 5 pages while they're on the table. And one of the very interesting things that I want to share with you is in a writing that I was doing for a client, they said, and I quote, "Humans think they know so much, but they know about as much as the period on this page in relation to the multiverse, not the universe, the multiverse." And that has stuck with me for a long time, that it's so true. We know so little about what is really, really happening on not only on this planet, but in the universe or the multiverse. So if you want to do writing, think of a way to ask Spirit to give you a message when you get to a letter. You can start with the alphabet. And maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's a jolt, maybe it's I don't know what, a blink of your eye, but some way that will always be the same every time you hit the letter or the word that they are wanting to give you. And you might be able to find your own pattern and do your own writing. And do you have a question?
Judy, we have a short meditation that we sometimes do as a group to see if we could get messages, and sometimes people do get messages. It was specifically, the meditation was written specifically for automatic writing. But I'm wondering, when you talk about writing out all the letters of the alphabet, it made me think of a Ouija board. Is there any difference between doing what you're doing and doing it with a Ouija board?
I don't know. I just wrote it out on lined paper, the alphabet, and pointed, but maybe it's not much different. I haven't seen a Ouija board in probably 50 years, so I don't even know what's on it anymore. But probably you could do the same thing with the alphabet on a Ouija board. Why not?
Or I don't have a Ouija board, but I have the same thing. It's called an angel board, and it's got all the letters of the alphabet and the yes, no, and it's exactly the same, but it's, it's nice and bright, and it's got angel on it.
You just need to then find out what is the message Spirit is giving you to tell you that's the right letter.
Yeah.
It's feeling, is it a movement? It will be something that will be consistently a yes or consistently a no. So, and after you do enough of that, then you might be able to hear the words again and start to write sentences.
Does anyone have any questions or something they'd like to add? I think everybody's just enthralled.
I think that was absolutely fascinating and fabulous. How you went from a person who had no interest or no belief in this to simply grieving the loss of your son, and then being aware of this thing that was going on that was not that you weren't controlling. It's fascinating. It's a wonderful story. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was very exciting. The loss of my son was the greatest loss of my life. But the gift that he left me, the ability to get in touch with him and to be able to talk to him through my hand, was the greatest gift that I can ever, just more than words can say.
Yeah.
I was particularly interested in how your husband reacted. That was just so adorable that he went straight for the practical. Yeah, but it worked, didn't it? So that's pretty cool. Very, very interesting. Thank you.
And it was a question he knew I wouldn't know the answer to, so it had to come from Todd, but not from me. Yeah.
That's so great.
It opened a world to me that you are very familiar with, but I was not familiar with at all. I was brought up a Christian, and you didn't deal with any of this stuff,
Hey, some of
that-
us here were Jehovah's Witnesses, so we really were
Yeah,
not to do that.
exactly. So,
Yeah, and several of us here have lost children and parents, and you
Mhm.
know, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not easy. I am going to post, somebody asked for the angel board, so here's one. There are others, but this is one on Amazon. $22. That's not the one I have, but it's, I really, you can
Thank you.
use anything. It's like, scrying. You can use a crystal ball or a mirror or water or anything that works for you. I like your vibrating hand though. Go ahead, Pam.
I'm sorry, it just went right out of my head. The thing where you hold something and it swings
You mean
around.
one of these?
pendulum.
A pendulum.
Thank you,
Yes.
pendulum. I've had one, and I talked to my auntie, who's very good. I said, well, how do I know whether it's saying yes or no? She says, ask it. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, duh. So I did. I said, show me yes. And it moved a certain way. So every time before I use it, I say, show me yes. And it does. And I think it's a really cool thing because I've used it and I really appreciate them.
Mhm.
I teach dowsing classes with pendulum. And that's how you train. It's called training your pendulum. You tell it to show me a yes, and then you tell it to show me a no.
Uh-huh.
And then you say your name, is my name, I would say, is my name Judy, and it should show me a yes. And then I would say, is my name Susan, and it would show me a no. So you ask it yes and no questions that you know the answer to already, and it should give you the correct answer.
Good to know. Good, thank you.
Once it does that, you've got it trained, so to speak. Then you can ask it questions you don't know the answer to.
Yes. Judy, you said you were raised a Christian.
Yes.
I went to a Christian spiritualist church in Oregon for many, many years. And they definitely believe in spirits and getting messages from the other side and in reincarnation. So it's
Okay, I was brought up Catholic, which was not the case at all.
I'm a Cabu, Catholic Buddhist.
Okay,
It works for me.
Several years ago, somebody, and I think it was somebody in this group, said not to hold the pendulum with the thumb, and it had something to do with ego. Have you heard anything about
no,
that?
I never have.
As I said, I teach pendulum work all the time, and you can hold it any way that's comfortable for you. It's not going to make a difference.
And what if it doesn't move? If you're holding it steady and ask a question, it just doesn't move.
If it doesn't move, then it's not. No, that's a no. And if I say, show me a yes, that's a yes. Show me a no. Show me a yes. The pendulum moves, your hand doesn't move. And you start your dowsing by getting your yes and your no down pat, you might say. And then you start asking questions you know the answer to, and then questions you don't know the answer to. And after that, and so it will then begin you've got it, once you've got the yes and no trained to questions you know are right or wrong, yes or no's, then you can ask a question you don't know the answer to, and it will tell you.
It doesn't always though, because I've been doing this for a long time, so I know the yes and the no. And so today I asked something that I definitely didn't know the answer to and wanted to, and it just sat there. It didn't move at all.
That's interesting. You also have to be aware that sometimes you can have entity attachments, which you're probably familiar with. Sure. And you need to clear the entities, because the entities will interfere with your work.
Susan, you have a hand up.
Yeah, I was actually, thank you, just going to ask about that, like sometimes periodically clearing the pendulum that you use, like I use like a sage process to clear mine. I don't know how often you have to do it, but sort of I do it after, several uses to kind of clear things, and then I go through the yes and no again.
Hmm.
So maybe you need to, give that a shot.
Oh, yeah, that's good to know. Carol, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was gonna ask along the same line about clearing, like every time should you clear it before you use the pendulum? And then my second question was, if it isn't a yes or no, do they spell it, do they go to each letter and then stop the pendulum, like to spell it like a Ouija board would, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've never used a pendulum to spell. What I use is I point the letter with a pencil or whatever you have,
Oh, okay.
and then I douse yes or no, whether that is the correct letter or not. So you can do it with yes or no and just go through the alphabet. It takes time, but after a while, you might be able to hear the words, start hearing the words, and not have to go by the letters. But there is what's called a Clear Entities program that we have written. We've got a group here, like your group, that physically came together for a long time. And we wrote a Clear Entities program that we programmed into ourselves. And then we just initiate the Clear Entities program when we want to clear a house. We clear homes with that. I clear homes all the time. You can clear your pendulum with it. You can clear anything, but
I'll think about it. He's going this summer.
Was that a question I heard?
I didn't hear what you just said, whoever said that.
I don't know who it was. Whoever spoke, could you please repeat what you just said?
I'm sorry, it was me. I'm new to all of this, and so I accidentally hit my mic.
There are no
I'm just enjoying
accidents.
listening. I've never heard of any of this, so I'm like fascinated.
Okay, great. Well, anything, that you have to say or any questions are always welcome. So, Judy, why don't you tell us about the new program you and Hetty have?
That's what, well, I'll show you. This is a color wheel, color compass. It looks like I don't know, looks like a painter's palette.
Mm-hmm.
It's got violet at the top, red at the bottom. And over the years, as handwriting analysts, traits, of course, traits are what I look for in personality. And I've done handwriting analysis for corporations for many years now. I mean, really for corporations, large corporations, like Mobil Oil and McDonald's Corporation and just really corporations, big ones. And I worked with mostly their executive team to do personality assessment through the handwriting analysis. And one day, one of my friends who worked with a master dowser from Europe brought out a color wheel like this and said to me, and I said, what is that used for? What do you do with that? And she said, well, that's how they dowse to identify minerals. And each mineral will dowse to a different color, and that's how they know what the mineral is. And it was used in times, in older times, a long time ago, when they didn't have any gadgets or tools or technology to know what minerals were in the earth. And this color wheel would tell them with the pendulum and the color wheel, they would dowse it. She said, and people dowse colors too. And I said, well, do all people dowse the same color? I'm thinking the human species will dowse a color. And she said, no, everybody douses a different color. And I said, well, if everyone douses a different color, what do the colors mean? She said, nobody knows. So that was like a bell went off in my head. I'm telling you, I just thought, well, how could nobody knows and everybody douses a different color? Personality is like my thing. And so I made this one, or one like it, and started dowsing everyone I knew, all of my handwriting clients, everyone on TV, anywhere. I dowsed everyone. And then I started looking at the traits, behaviors, the way people were. And this is literally 20 years of research of dowsing people to find out what their personality is and how it shows up on this color wheel. And finally, and that's what Hetty and I are working with, is writing a book on these colors and what they mean to personality. So it's quite interesting because there are basically 4 colors. The first color tells us, when we douse on that wheel, the first color of a human tells us how they perceive their world. So in other words, some people perceive their world through what I call harmony, is a filter. They look for harmony in the environment. Other people perceive their world through systems. Everything that they see to them somehow either fits in a system or doesn't fit in a system. Does it hurt a system or help a system? Some people will see their world through what I call rules. They, in their mind, have a set of rules that the planet is based on, and you have either fit in the rules or you don't fit in the rules. So there are different ways we filter our world around us. Is it harmonious? Is it systems? Does it follow the rules? There are also another one is would be survival. Some people filter the world through, does this help or hurt my survival? In other words, everything that comes to them is filtered by, does it help or hurt? So this color system tells us how you look at your world, how you filter your world. And then the second color tells us how you respond back to your world. In other words, do you respond back emotionally? Do you respond back angrily? Do you respond back with action now that I have to do something immediately? There are all different kinds of responses, but it's a consistent thing in your personality. And then it also tells us how you filter your world, but it tells us how much trust you have in the universe. And trust in the universe is not trusting people. Do we believe that the universe is really benevolent? So I don't have to worry because things are going to work out and everything is for the best? Or do I believe the world is not benevolent and therefore I need to control it and be afraid because nobody's in charge here? So it tells us that, and it also tells us how strong your will is. In other words, how much will you push to get what you need or desire? People can have a light will, which is basically they kind of go with the flow, or they can have very strong will that it's my way or no way. We do it my way, and everything in between. There's 8 different levels of how much we will either not push or push to get what we need or desire. So when we put the 4 components together, how we see the world, filter it, how we respond back to it, and then how we push to get what we want, and then how much do we trust the universe. Those 4 factors, when we put them together, will tell us a huge amount about the personality of an individual. Whether they're easy to live with or not, whether they will, push their will on you, whether you like it or not, whether they're abusive or whether they're not, or whether they're loving and kind and generous. It tells those 4 things, which take a minute to douse, tells you a tremendous amount about an individual. And that's the book that we're writing, Hetty and I, to help people to understand. Most of all, to understand, I'll give you an example. I had a woman who on the color wheel harmony was the way she looked at her world. And she was a very giving person. And she was not strong-willed. And her trust level was high, but she had a son that was extremely abusive to her daughter. And as he got older, was very abusive to her. And she didn't understand why he was so abusive, where there was no abuse in the family. No, she was not abusive. She was a single parent, but she was never abusive physically or anything like that. And so, being very consistent with motherhood, we blame ourselves for anything that's wrong with our kids or that we perceive. And when I did his colors, his colors showed that he was innately aggressive. He just was innately aggressive. So much so that the example I gave her, which sounds horrid, but it was the only way I could get her to understand that it's like giving birth to a rattlesnake. No matter how much you love it, care for it, and nurture it, if you go near it, it will bite you. And as this boy grew up, he would beat up his sister, he would beat up his mother, he would literally physically abuse them, and they had no father in the house. And it wasn't because she wasn't a good parent, it was because his colors on the color wheel showed that his traits were just what they were. And it had nothing to do with her. And so some people are born very kind and loving individuals, and some just aren't. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way they are. But it certainly helps to know it ahead of time. And how many people will have supervisors in a company that are kind and gentle, and others will have supervisors that are just nasty? And it's just the way people are made. And the planet is about contrast. The planet is about contrast. There's warm, sweet, and loving, and there's nasty. And it's just the way it is. And we need contrast on this planet, because if we don't have contrast, we would be like robots. If everything were beautiful and sweet and loving all the time, we would never have to think, we would never be creative, we would never be inventive, we would just be basking in that, and we would be robotic. And so the planet is contrast, so that we need to think and grow and learn and create and invent. It's just the way it is. It's part of the deal.
Okay, was the mother sure that he wasn't being abused outside the home, or that he hadn't had a concussion or anything?
No,
I mean, some children will not tell when they're being abused at school or somewhere else.
I would agree with that, but this was not the case. It was a warm, loving situation.
Well, in the home, yes, but sometimes things happen outside. I mean, I really have a hard time. And, I've been a handwriting analyst for more than 50 years. So I've seen thousands and thousands of samples and stories. And it's just, I don't know. I personally have a hard time believing that kids are born that way with it. I think everything is nature and nurture, both.
Well,
Uh,
that's, you're absolutely right that that has been the theory, that everything is nature and nurture. It's genetics as well as how they're nurtured at home and the environment. But there's one other factor that Hetty and I have found that we have not considered in the personality of a human, and that is the soul's mission in this lifetime. And the soul comes into that body. And actually, this color wheel depicts the soul's purpose for being here.
Mm.
That's the other piece, because you've come here to learn in this lifetime. And each lifetime is a different experience, because we've had multiple lifetimes. But it's different experiences because of what we need to learn. And so you come in with different colors, personalities, in order to learn whatever lessons are important for you to learn for your progress as a soul through these incarnations. Nurture and nature. Hetty is a psychologist. She's a PhD psychologist and so on. And nurture and nature were what she had learned as well, until we learned about the colors. And that was the missing piece. It's kind of like a stool with two legs. It needs that third leg to be secure so it can hold up. And that's what the soul brings to that personality.
You just reminded me of something I saw on a video the other day. I think it was on Sandra Champlain's. I know it couldn't have been. Anyway, somebody through Sandra. And he was talking about, how we come here to learn lessons. We know that's true. And some of us say, who would choose to come here and have these horrible experiences? And that what he said that really made sense to me was like, if you've seen that, and I have not, but I know there's a reality show called, I think it's called Naked and Afraid. And they drop somebody off literally naked in some desolate area for like a month. And they go, they've got to take care of themselves and find food and water and all of these things, which is really, who would want to do that? Or somebody who becomes a football player and they're going to get beat up and concussed and all that. And yet people choose to do those things. And he kind of gave me a different perspective on the choices that we make before we come to the earth.
Yeah,
So,
we come for a reason. We come for what we need to learn,
yeah.
or what our soul needs to learn.
Nina.
So I have a question about the colors. Do they have any relation to our auras? You know what, when people do aura?
Nope, no
no?
relation whatsoever. This is the soul's contribution. It's not the aura at all.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
I see.
I can do the colors for one of you, and then you can kind of hear what happens. Are you interested in that or not?
Of course, but we are coming to the end of our hour, and I mean, you guys can stay on. I will have to leave. Pamela has a question.
I do have a question about the colors. You say of the wheel, and it's not our aura. Is it something that perhaps we're drawn to? Like we really love purple, we love royal blue. How about teal? These colors that we are attracted to. Is that part of? Would you say that it's part of that wheel or not?
I can't really say yes or no, because for instance, my first color happens to be what's called violet blue, which is between the violet and the blue up here at the top. And the color is right here, it's violet blue. One of my favorite colors all growing up was violet. So is that the case? Because that happens to be my first color, one of my first colors. But that's not necessarily, I found, true for everybody, so.
Okay,
It's
thank
not
you.
consistent, and when we developed this color wheel, it had to be consistent all the way through, no exceptions for it to be part of the process.
Great, thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to stop the recording